Good. I just want to take a minute to welcome you to NICC's series. Of course, today talking a little bit about this idea of brain health in the workplace. Excited that you can join us. And the topic of brain health is becoming very essential as we're kind of experiencing a lot of differences and uncertainties within our organizations. And I'm excited to have you on with us. I am joined today by Tim, and we are going to be able to share some topics and some information and looking for, again, some of these goals. Our goal is really to understand this idea of leadership mindset and the importance of reframing your mind to minimize stress and really building resiliency, because what we are experiencing is a lot of change. And many of us, of course, have had to do change rather quickly with our standard operating procedures, just as well as just a change in our mindset, because this situation that's happening is quite unique. And the big thing that I always like to talk about in regards to brain health and what's happening is we are currently kind of experiencing a little bit of a grief cycle. People, again, are grieving what has been in the past. And so it's important for leaders to really understand this cycle. And many of you may have seen this cycle before, and others of you may not have. But this is, again, the grief cycle that we look at. The first couple of weeks, of course, employees might have been in kind of this shock or denial. You know, is this COVID really that big of a deal? Is this something that we really have to follow through? What's going to happen? There's a lot of fear that starts to come into place. And that fear can also cycle into this angry stage. You know, you might be seeing employees who are feeling a little bit angry. Why are we still open? Why are we not open? There's some denial that happens. Why is this happening? And so because we are experiencing this grief cycle, I think it becomes important as leaders to try to truly be empathetic. And empathy is one of the biggest things I think is going to help leaders during times of crisis. You know, talking with the staff, talking with the people that you're working with, asking, how are you doing? What are some things that you feel comfortable with? And again, just opening up some of that dialogue. This anger stage usually lasts for quite a bit of time if they are not certain as to what's happening. We've got to be clear in what your processes are going to be. So a lot of organizations right now have been talking about, you know, this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be having extra wipes in the front. We're going to be sanitizing every hour. And again, having kind of just a clear process or procedure, especially if they're considered essential. Now, I know, Tim, you guys are considered essential. And one of the big things that I know you do as a leader is do an excellent job of communicating. Are you willing to share a little bit about what has been working from your perspective in helping your staff work through this grief cycle?
Oh, sure. I mean, I would say that you can't communicate enough. Now, granted, if you got 100 employees, it's a little tougher to do, you know, person to person. But, you know, here in a smaller company, you know, obviously maintaining proper social distances and stuff like that, but you can still communicate with everybody. And how are you doing? How are you feeling? What's going on in the family? I'm trying to think what else. I think probably the biggest thing is it's more about listening and just letting them. I'm going to say, I'm not going to say if it's bent, but just to say what's on their mind. And a lot of times when they can say it out loud, they feel better. Otherwise, it's maybe something that's kind of trapped inside them a little bit, and they don't want to say it. But once they say it, they feel better. So for the most part, I mean, that's been very helpful. And then, you know, and trying to keep them updated as things change. And they also understand that we don't know the answers to everything. But that's a lot of it. It's more of the open door that they always can talk when they want to talk. So.
Yeah. Well, and you're bringing up some great points. I mean, the biggest thing in any type of crisis, because this would be considered almost a traumatic experience for people.
Yeah.
And really just being opening to hear and listen. And one of the big things I encourage too is don't minimize people's fears. You know,
Right.
Don't give them you know, this will pass, you know, don't worry about it. That's not that big of a deal. The minute you minimize, you cause more of that anger cycle to come into play. So, you know, because you are blessed to have a smaller company, I know a lot of companies have had individuals work from home. And
Right.
so as you jump into this work from home, you might see a little bit more of this depressed portion of it, you know, a little bit more of this loneliness. You know, I'm used to having coworkers. Now, I'm naturally an extrovert. I'm used to having a classroom full of people. Now I'm having to do this through Zoom. Oh my gosh, panic, guilt. Can I do this? You know, the fear factor, you know, and a lot of people are in that fear stage. So with brain health, it becomes essential to really be an excellent listener and really have that empathetic listening, not feeling
Mhm.
sorry for people, but just, again, giving
Yeah.
them a chance to vent and share their frustration. The other thing, some of the things that we talk about as a leader during crisis, crisis definitely builds character. Well, it doesn't build character. It does build character, but it also reveals it. One of the things that my mentor, John Maxwell, talks about is this idea of leaders are born during crisis situations, because people can get into kind of that mass panic, and they're looking for somebody to guide them, to be kind of that calmness and to kind of help them focus. So, are you leading? Are you educating yourself and the people you lead with the CDC recommendations? I've seen a lot of companies put out emails of, here's the expectations. What's important? Are you sharing with your people that the safety of them is essential? And not just their physical safety, but again, their psychosocial safety. I know some organizations have been doing morning huddles via the internet for all their remote workers, but then also, morning huddles while you're still social distancing. And then having just a plan, but then letting people know, hey, this plan is subject to change. As we get more information, we're going to have to be flexible. And change is only hard for people who aren't ready for change. So can you get them ready for change by reassuring and hearing their issues, and then creating connections and trying to be as authentic as possible. People always remember how you made them feel most during this time, not necessarily what you're telling them to do, but that mental compassion. Empathy is becoming essential. Again, Henry Ford once said that there's a great secret to success, and its ability to put yourself into somebody else's situations. Stop judging people, start helping people. If I've had a lot of time to watch Netflix. Netflix and I are becoming friends. There is a great documentary out there that Brene Brown utilizes on this idea of empathetic leadership. And, really, I'm in it with you. I'm not here to fix you. I'm just here to support you in any way possible. So empathy is just that key factor. Tim, is there anything that you want to speak to in regards to just what you've seen for empathy to kind of help support your staff?
Well, I mean, this is right. I get back to the listening part of things, and just to be able to listen to them and let them vent. And so I understand where they're at, and everybody's at a different place. But that's helpful too in crafting the next message. I would encourage. I know emails are good and they're needed here and there, but I think especially in the larger companies or whatnot, it would be good if there was a video of somebody maybe recording something or a message, because then it becomes the email of the day.
Right.
And what's different? I don't know what's different. Nothing's changed because we're repeating the same things, and I get that it's important to reinforce those things. But anyway, I guess that's the one thought. And you talked about Brene Brown. I think she was on 60 Minutes a week or so ago.
Okay.
And they talked about this very thing. So you probably can find that news thing out on YouTube somewhere, I went doubt. So
Yeah. It's funny that you bring up the idea of the video. One of the companies that I work with as well, actually their CEO did put out a video message and put out the idea that, what, hey, I'm a little nervous too. This is scary for us. This, and just kind of built that idea that he was experiencing the same types of feelings. And so
Yep.
that was justifying and allowing that discussion to open up, because oftentimes with brain health or with mental health, the biggest thing is stigma, and people are scared to ask for help. And it becomes essential to be able to just share a little bit of that and be a little bit more vulnerable as a leader as well. So,
right.
so that's, I think, a big piece as well. Other things that we talk about, again, how are you doing? I can understand why you would feel that way. This is difficult. Many of us are feeling this way right now. These are just some empathetic leadership phrases that when people use those, they help support individuals. So again, be okay with sharing your genuineness as a leader. Again, the other thing as a leader is, are you operating in faith or are you operating in fear? And I'm going to tell you, you bounce back between these masks probably on a daily minute basis right
Yeah.
now, and trying to keep that mindset that, we're going to do the best with what we have right now and cut ourselves a break. Sometimes as leaders, we have all these expectations, and if expectations are too high during this crisis situation, we might have a lot of disappointment. So ask yourself as a leader, what is really necessary what isn't necessary? Are there things that are urgent, and what are some of those things that you can put on the back burner? The other thing that you look at is some of the stress situations that some of your staff may be having, because again, we are disrupting typical patterns and typical routines that people have been used to, helping them shift into this, oh my God, I'm stuck at home. Well, you know what? You're safe at home. Just simple wordage can help your staff. Oh my gosh, am I going to get sick? Well, we'll decrease your chances of getting sick by following these guidelines. Will I run out of items at home? It's amazing how, I don't know about you, but I'm getting close to the toilet paper issue, and I'm not sure where I'm going to get it from, but it'll be okay. I have everything I need for right now. And just reassuring, I think, becomes important, but it's your wordage or your verbiage that you're using that can help people get more into that mindset. That reframing is key. The reframing idea of us, I'm in Wisconsin, and Wisconsin's right now on kind of a safe at home initiative where, again, we're quarantining at home as best as possible unless we're essential employees. And that sparked a whole bunch of restriction for people. And now they're like, oh my gosh, I have all these constraints. I can't do anything. It's about looking above and rising out of those constraints. I share the story about the cat in the hat because one of the things that we see is basically Dr. Seuss was given a restriction because Spalding, who was an editor at Houghton Mifflin, identified 348 words that these first graders should know. And he challenged Dr. Seuss to write a book using only 348 words. And he could have said, you know what, this is terrible, this is impossible, I'm not going to do this. But he actually, with those constraints, was much more creative because he didn't have all the noise. And we have so much noise that's happening around us. Being able to see, you know what, I can work with some of these limitations. Again, we're starting to see that those restrictions can help us focus on truly what's important. So the cat in the hat was the result. So again, don't look about those constraints, but try to rise above those constraints. And the other big thing as leaders is really trying to help build some of that resiliency in your staff. It's reframing. So we've talked a little bit about the importance of reframing things, rewording things, and then also just clarifying your purpose and meaning. Why are you essential? I'll tell you right now, it's kind of nice to know that you're essential, but it's a lot of fear sometimes of, I'm being exposed to certain things. But what is the purpose? What are we trying to achieve? What is that goal? And managing emotions too. The big emotions that come out, first of all, are anger. And fear resonates through anger. And you might have people that are a little bit more explosive. You may have people that are, more resistant to do things. So just honor that is oftentimes just fear. It's not them being defiant in any way. It's just them having to have somebody kind of coach them through that fear factor. Tim, is there anything that you want to speak to in regards to what you have been seeing with essential staff and this need for resiliency?
I think one thing I've been trying to do is empower them, and that's maybe the angle I've been, because there is a lot of fear out there, and what can you control and what can't you control, and sorting that out. And there's a lot of unknowns out there, but the things you can do is you keep your distances, you keep things cleaner if you can. If somebody's getting in on your comfort zone, and it happens, it's a human condition. It's okay to tell them that, hey, just take a few steps back, and they shouldn't take it personal. And I've told that to folks here, and everybody's been okay with it because everybody has a different range. Right. So I guess that's probably the big things I'm thinking of right now. I may think of something as we go, but
sure. Yeah. But you're spot on. Just letting people know, we got to communicate it, and this is the need for communication is at its highest level right now. To be able to share,
and that way you don't get angry. Like you say, the anger builds up from the fear. If you can verbalize it, hey, can you not do that? You've already dispelled it then, right then. It's gone. So. Right.
Diffusing that becomes a big key piece. And, EQ or emotional intelligence is a big factor that starts to play in this. And as a leader, being able to have that good EQ yourself, try not to take things personal, especially if they're coming at you and they're frustrated and they're angry. Like, why do we have to do this? This is not what I signed up for. This is crap. Again, that's just fear. So being able to bounce back from that fear and not be able to take that personal as well.
And
The other big thing,
I do agree with your statement about, you know, letting them know how we are essential. You know, I mean, so they understand, because sometimes it's a big long list of people that are essential, and but there are this is how it is, and this is why it is, and this is where this job is going. Oh, okay, I understand. So
yeah, and that's an excellent thing to bring up, Tim, is just that clear communication of why. You know, why are we essential? Why are we needed? Why are we doing this? And that definitely helps reduce some of that. The other big thing with reframing, another great thing on Netflix, Bethany Hamilton has a documentary out there on Unstoppable. She, of course, was the surfer who was bitten by the shark and lost her arm and was slated to be a pro surfer, but because of her injury, she had to adapt. And she really talks about this importance of being able to adapt and being able to, again, do things that she used to do, but just do them a little bit different way. And so, again, coaching people on this importance of adaptability is important in that brain health piece as well. The other things, you're seeing a lot of people, especially if you're working remotely, there's just this pressure of where it feels like there's everything going on. And you have to, again, like Tim said before, ask yourself, what do you have control over and what don't you have control over? One of the big things, ask yourself, is this going to matter? Do you have this never ending to-do list? It's amazing that first week when we went into kind of this cycle, it was like, oh my God, we have to do this and they have to do this. And it just almost like hypersensitive. Everybody was trying to hyper do everything. And now that we're starting to settle into some things, we're feeling a little bit more overwhelmed. And is this really going to matter? And I'm finding out, I'm telling people to give yourself a break, trying not to be perfect during this. I've had a lot of things in my business change, and I kind of struggled with this. My first week was like, oh my gosh, I have to do this, this, and this. The second week I was panic and I can't do this. This is fear. And the third week is like, okay, all right, I'm starting to get into the routine. It takes about 28 days for a new routine to happen. So give yourself a break during that. Don't try to feel as though you need to be perfect at all times. And again, some of us are still operating as standard necessary. The other big thing too is letting go of your ego. I know sometimes brain health, some of your staff might get into this, nobody appreciates me. I'm the first one to leave. I got to do all this. I can't take a day off. Help them get out of that martyrdom syndrome. You're here, you're essential. This is why you're essential. And just let them talk through some of those situations. This is just what we consider an irrational belief system. So again, just help them coach through that. And the other big thing I like to talk about in brain health is this growth mindset. Being able to use the word yet, and just because you're struggling doesn't mean you're failing. Getting a little bit better every day, 1% better every day. And I know, Tim, you have a tendency to be creative in your improv and being able to think on your feet. And one of the things they always talk to you in improv was yes and versus no but. And that's kind of that growth mindset of yes and. Has anything been helping with that mindset for you from a leadership perspective?
Well, I mean, this is more in the conversation with the people about yes and yes and. Well, to keep them talking, to help come up with solutions, because our workforce or what we can do and can't do on the job right now is changing. Or if you're having to go out and install something, or you're having to go out and do something like that, how do we want to handle this? Where can we become creative with it? Maybe there's, how should I say it? I think there's a number of paradigms that may get broke down as well, saying, well, we have to do it this way because that's how we've done it. Well, you actually may discover some ways that even when this all settles down, we want to do it this way anyway, because it streamlines a number of things, makes it faster, gives you an advantage in going forward. And I guess it's always my phrase of looking for the pony. Where's the pony in this mess? So,
yeah, that's always a great story. Sometimes we feel like we're surrounded by disaster and we've got to see that bright side. It's important, and that's really truly a growth mindset as a leader becomes essential. And you bring up a great point. People are going to grieve. Well, we used to do it this way. If I had $1 for every time I heard somebody say we used to do it this way, it would be essential. But again, people are grieving that. You know,
Yeah.
they're going through that trauma of, man, I got to be able to let go of it. But when they see that they're getting rid of a lot of unnecessary types of behaviors or even procedures, we can streamline this much more effectively. It becomes essential. Again,
Right.
keeping that growth mindset. The other big thing is, you know, what do I know to be true and what do I know not to be true? You're seeing more and more noise with information out there. What's actually factual? What isn't factual? If you're sitting remotely and you're doing a lot of the social media, there's so much junk out there, and you've got to ask yourself, you know, is this a fact or is this the story that I'm telling myself? Because that story becomes quite large. So again, testing your own thoughts. Is what I'm thinking true? Is there another way to look at this situation? Is this accurate? I think that becomes essential in our brain health, not only as a leader, but as you start coaching your staff. How do you know this? So again, and then making it a learning opportunity. You know, I'm seeing a lot of organizations that are basically saying, hey, this is a way to innovate. You know, the best way to innovate is to have a crisis. And what do we need to do different that it's going to help us survive when this is over with? So again, just really looking at this idea of, you know, there's no such thing as failure. There's only feedback. Look at how many people have learned how to Zoom that have never said, you know what, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to try this. You know, being able to say, hey, let's learn from it. And I'll tell you, people are much more willing to be less judgmental of you learning something new right now, because of where we're at. So we don't have to do it perfect. Sometimes you have to just get started to make it work. So anything you want to speak to in regards to that, Tim, in making it a learning opportunity from your perspective as a leader?
I mean, yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at earlier. There's always opportunities here of how to streamline, how to improve things, how to, you know, that would make things better. And you're right about the patience. You know, there is more patience right now because we want to bring them up online on Zoom or on working remotely from home. And so there's more patience. So let's get it worked out. Let's figure it out. And I think people are more adept to, or are more willing, I should say, to give it a try. And as they ease into it, it's also goes into my phrase of cooking frogs. I mean, as you just slowly turn things up or change things, it's a slower change. And you talk about 1%. The change sticks and stays, and they feel comfortable with it, and then it can become a way of life.
Yeah. And that just becomes the new norm. And we're all trying to figure out what the new norm is. So
Right.
again, just that 1% keeping us moving forward, making it a learning opportunity. I mean, you're seeing some positive stuff out there right now. How can I spin it? You know, you're seeing these initiatives, the Happy Heart Hunt. Again, just trying to do something, make a positive out of it. There's a couple companies that are, you know, having some fun with this idea of Zoom. You know, my brother's company out of Chicago, they've been doing Zoom bingo. So they're like, okay, let's just have some fun with some people, you know. You know, if you see anybody who says, you know what, sorry, I was on mute, oh, you get to block off that bingo. And you're kind of making games of it and being a little bit lighthearted, because you do sometimes just have to laugh at yourself. And again, have a little bit of humor. I know sometimes it's hard when you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is a major crisis, but you know, find ways that you can have a little fun with the situation, because humor becomes essential. The other thing I got sent was just a friendly reminder when you're doing Zoom, the actual content of the meeting is about only 2%. So there's a whole lot of distractions. So what's your message in that 2%? You know, are you, again, what are you looking at and what's the goal? But realistic expectations, I think, is essential for our brain health, because the minute somebody has anxiety comes from overwhelming. If they're expecting it looks too big, you've got to be able to chunk it and try to help people see kind of the small steps to get there. That's why I always say 1%. So again, you know, try the little things first of all. The other big thing is, you know, trying to get into this problem solving mindset. You know, what are the possibilities? If you keep asking what the possibilities are instead of the we can't do this, that's going to help in that brain health as well. And then, like Tim said before, you know, what do you have control over? The only thing we really have control over is really how we respond to situations. And how we respond, I always like to say, if we're using good mental brain health as a leader, we're responding with ways, okay, I need to understand where they're coming from. And you might even ask them, help me understand where you're coming from with this. Help me understand how this is out of your control or in your control. Just, again, help me understand instead of being reactive. The minute we jump into reactive, we are now contributing to the demise of our brain health situation. And the other thing is doing the rocking chair test, looking back on your life, what's going to matter when we look back on this, what's going to stick out for us. And again, the leaders who are able to see positive vision and really look at the situations that can help them streamline is going to be much more effective. The big thing too is we manage choices, we don't manage time. So really prioritize your to-do list. Again, avoid procrastination. Helping people multitask is becoming important, having some balance. The other big thing they're talking about, because we are in a situation, I'm hearing more and more people tell me, gosh, Lisa, I'm sleeping all the time. Sleep is a part of that traumatic experience. Sometimes we need to sleep, and know the difference between just having that productive sleep, or again, is it kind of falling into that depression sleep? But just give yourself a break on that. A lot of people, again, are not giving themselves a break. Make some time and space. This is my friend Brian's office. He now had to work from home. He turned his master bathroom actually into his office space because he has 5 kids at home and a wife. So he needed to have his own space. So I'm like, send me a picture. It's not a perfect space. I was teasing him a little bit about his decorations, but he said it's working for him. So again, if you are working remotely, give yourself a chance to make some space. Again, we talked about that sleep. Sleep is required, necessary, because right now our subconscious on what we just used to do as routine has been pretty much given a big wave. So we are having to constantly think now. Think about new ways of being. Think about how we can do things different, because we're trying to, again, consciously think. It's making us more exhausted. So again, being able to play into that. Eat well. They're talking a lot about these as stress factors. Keep moving. Right now I've got 0.0 for running, but I'll tell you, getting outside and doing some walking has been very beneficial for the brain health. Try to have some sun, some nature. That's going to help. Take a little bit of break. Don't be sitting on Zoom meetings all day. Schedule some time for you to get outside. Meditate on what you're grateful for. This has definitely been something I've been trying to do as I've been experiencing, some grief and some loss. What am I grateful for? I've never had so much time to be able to actually connect and focus on content and things that I appreciate within the organization. And if all else, get a coach. Again, sometimes you just need to have somebody to chat with or to connect with. And I often say, get a coach who doesn't necessarily know everything about you, so that you can have that added support and you can set up some of those needs and establish that impact. So being aware of that becomes important. The final thing I talk about, I'm from a farm. I know Tim's from a farm too. Are you more like a cow or are you more like a buffalo? When you're faced with adversity, when you're faced with challenges, which way do you go? If you know anything about cows have a tendency to want to run away from the storm. They have this groupthink pattern of, let's keep moving away from the storm, avoiding the storm. Let's not try to do anything too hard. Let's try to make it as easy as possible. Where a buffalo is more of the animal that will look at the storm and will charge into the storm so that they can get through the storm quicker. And they will assess some of those situations. So again, when you're looking at brain health, look at this as an opportunity. What do we need to do? What's working? What isn't working? What do we need to do differently? And try to charge into it. The more we avoid it, the less likely our staff are going to be encouraged. They're going to feel as though they've been left out to kind of fend for themselves. Charge into it. Have some of those crucial conversations. Look at some of those areas, because right now we have a common enemy. The common enemy is COVID. The common enemy gives us time as teams to unify, to look at what can we do to be better. And again, keeping your teams moving forward are essential. If you want more resources, of course, I'm out of Wisconsin, so I do a lot of the work with WISE Wisconsin and also mental health first aid. So mentalhealthfirstaid.org has a variety of resources available to you. I have 2 handouts, of course, that were coming through as well, and you probably would have received those from Sarah. And what those were again, just some tips and tricks from the American Psychological Association, as well as from NAMI. And those are great resources to utilize as well. So as we're coming to a close on the presentation, I do want to thank you, Tim, for sharing some of your perspective. from an essential workplace and what has been working for you. But I'm also going to encourage you, if you do have any questions, comments, or want to learn a little bit more about brain health, mental health in the workplace, or other strategies, please feel free to reach out to me or to NICC to get some of those questions answered. But thanks again, Tim, for being here. And thanks, Sarah, for being an excellent coordinator for us. She's an excellent rock star in getting all the logistics of our webinars and things like that. So, Sarah, I appreciate all your extra efforts during this time of change. And I appreciate you for joining us today on this webinar. So keep shining. We will get through this. We are all in this together. But again, give yourself a break and be the best leader you can be. Thanks for joining us.